From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. On the second half of the program, we're going to recap a very busy week of news here in Rhode Island. But first, on Monday night, 7 o'clock, right here in WPRI 12, we are hosting a Massachusetts U.S. Senate primary debate. Incumbent Senator Ed Markey and his challenger, Congressman Joe Kennedy, in our studios for 1 hour. And look, it's been a crazy few months, so we wanted to get you up to speed on this very important race. Ted Nesi and I gathered a panel of experts, including UMass political science professor Shannon Jenkins and the editor of Politico, Massachusetts, Stephanie Murray, for a virtual political roundtable on the Markey-Kennedy matchup. All right. Hi, everybody. I want to kick things off to where you see the race standing, where it stands right now between Senator Ed Markey and Congressman Joe Kennedy. You know, sort of set the stage for everyone who's just sort of kind of tuning into this race. And Professor Jenkins, we're going to start with you. And first, let me just say, both Ted and I are very disappointed that we're not going to be on the campus of UMass Dartmouth to moderate the debate. But to put it mildly, the pandemic has changed everything. So we're sorry we're not going to see you on Monday night.
Yeah, I think it's an accurate statement to say the pandemic has changed everything, including this race. And that in some ways makes it really difficult to figure out where we are. From what I can see and what I can tell, right, Kennedy came into the race because he thought this was going to be an easy race. He thought he had a big lead. I think he thought Markey would just sort of roll over. I think I talked to this with Ted maybe, I don't know how many months ago. Like every month seems like a year these days. But that was, I think, what the thought was. And I think now where we stand, I think it's really anybody's race. I mean, I do think the odds makers might put Kennedy as their favorite, but the sort of most of the polling data that I'm seeing are showing it's a pretty much a toss-up at this point as we go really into the thick of the campaign. So,
Steph Murray from Politico, Massachusetts, let's go to you on that. I mean, you writing for Playbook every single morning. You're in touch with both of the campaigns. Where do they see themselves in the race? Does anyone feel like they got this all wrapped up at this point?
I don't think so. And as much as it's anybody's race, it's also kind of nobody's race right now. This was supposed to be a blockbuster, huge Senate primary, and it still is, but they're just competing for attention with all of these enormous news events. First, the coronavirus pandemic took them off the campaign trail. They're basically campaigning only online. And now with this widespread protest coming out across America, the perfect example to me was the debate last Monday when they came onto the debate stage. But if you flipped onto other news channels, President Trump was walking across the road from the White House to the church, and it was just this huge event. So to me, that was kind of a symbol of how much news that they really have to kind of get oxygen from, and it's going to be tough.
Yeah, Ted, I mean, as Steph points out, there's been a couple of debates. The last one was in Western Massachusetts. And prior to that, there was actually a live studio audience, if I remember right, for the WGBH debate. You've watched them. What have you learned from those debates and their style?
Well, yet another thing, I mean, I think Shannon and Steph set it up really well. And I think yet another thing is the fact that, you know, we were supposed to have the one debate in June. Last week's was supposed to be in March, or this week's. So, you know, they're having a compressed debate schedule now. The event, everything has changed about this race. I think, though, you know, a lot of it, what hasn't changed is kind of the question Joe Kennedy continues to face, which is, why, again, do you feel that Ed Markey needs to be replaced when it sounds like you two are going to vote nearly identically in the United States Senate? And Kennedy is still trying to figure out how to get it. His message is basically, you should have a star in this seat, right? If to be crass, right? You should have a really important national figure like an Elizabeth Warren, like Ted Kennedy, like John Kerry, and that Ed Markey doesn't cut it, along with the idea that Ed Markey spends too much time in Washington and in his nice house down in Maryland and all that. And that could work. Like, I don't want to sound like there's no chance that argument will work, that and Kennedy's other advantages, but certainly he hasn't necessarily been able to make a good ideological case that Ed Markey is voting wrong. If anything, Ed Markey gets to the left of him by, you know, if you listen to Ed Markey, you'd think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was his running mate in this U.S. Senate race. He mentioned her twice in one answer with you, Tim, when Ed Markey was on Newsmakers a couple weeks ago. So, it's a bit of a muddle, but I do think, I continue to think Kennedy has a little edge based on his name, his money, and just the fact that the two of them, there aren't a lot of distinctions right now, which could lead a lot of voters to do what they usually do in Massachusetts, which is vote for the Kennedy on the ballot.
Yeah, why don't you weigh in on that, Steph? And you're right, Ted, there was some pretty robust AOC name dropping in that interview. Steph, as Ted points out, if you line these two candidates up, you take off their name, particularly their surnames, they pretty much line up on all issues here. How are you seeing them trying to separate themselves from each other?
It's tricky, and something that, Kennedy has really kind of gone back to Markey's past record, his vote for the Iraq War, a few other votes that he made in Congress and in the Senate, and trying to hit him on those. But something that Markey said that I found kind of interesting after the debate when we were in a virtual spin room, which was a new experience for me. He said, Congressman Kennedy is pointing to my record in the past, but I'm looking towards the future. So it seems like he's kind of found a way to sort of disarm those critiques. Whether it'll work, I'm not sure, but I thought that was an interesting thing that he said.
Professor Jenkins, priding myself in being master of the obvious, COVID is not gone. I don't know if you've heard, but mass campaigns, massive campaign events, I should say, are largely off the table, right? And we're now really entering the main part of the campaign for everybody, but we're talking about this race. The primaries in the beginning of September, so it really comes down to July and August. How does campaigning look during the pandemic? How are these two campaigns going to move forward in the next two crucial months?
So I'll start by moving back before I move forward. I think really the pandemic disrupted Markey's strategy more than Kennedy's strategy. Markey had the classic John Walsh strategy that he initiated with Deval Patrick, which is rally the troops for a convention, right, which was supposed to be, I believe, last weekend. And so the strategy was that Markey was going to come roaring out of state convention. He was able to say he had more delegates, right? He beat Kennedy. I think we all would agree that that was what their strategy was. The convention gets called off. Now they don't have enough signatures because they are figuring out, right? And so it has completely upended the Markey campaign strategy. So I think they've had to adjust a little bit more than the Kennedy campaign. I think they were burning through cash a little bit more quickly, in part because of their need to collect signatures. And so the pandemic has hurt Markey, I think, more than Kennedy. That having been said, we're entering in the campaign, right, the heat of the campaign where it's neck and neck. So that even though Markey's strategy was all upended, he's in a pretty good position compared to where he was, say, 6 to 9 months ago. So both of them face sort of the same challenge. I think Stephanie has alluded to. How do you break through to voters when there's so much else going on? I will admit, I have not watched a debate yet. I am a political scientist, but there are so many other things going on that I'm trying to figure out in the news. I haven't had time. If you can't get me to watch the debate, I don't know who you can get to watch debates. And I think that's really the challenge of the campaign sort of moving forward.
Well, since UMass Dartmouth is one of our partners in the debate Monday night, I hope and expect it.
We'll watch that one, I promise.
Okay, good. And Ted, a lot of this might come down to TV ad spending in the next couple of months. Steph, I'm going to ask you who's got ads out right now in a second, but we are learning this morning, we're taping this on a Thursday morning, that there's some more outside spending coming into this campaign.
Yeah, the Globe reported this morning that one of the leading environmental groups in Massachusetts is committing $200,000 to TV ads for Markey, who of course has less campaign money of his own than Kennedy. Steph had previewed that this would probably be coming months ago, I think. And Kennedy has tried to make hay out of the fact that Markey in his 2013 race was all about a people's pledge, no super PAC money. Now that Markey's the underdog, he's okay with positive, progressive super PACs. He says, I don't want any negative ads against Joe Kennedy, but positive super PACs are okay. And again, sometimes I think in a Democratic primary, those kind of process-related critiques can resonate because there's a lot of Democrats who are very motivated by, pure government, especially since Citizens United. But on the other hand, most elections do come down to the economy and who can deliver and that kind of thing. And I don't know that I've seen Kennedy be able to really get that attack to really, really resonate with people, partly because it's rather obvious that, part of, it instantly advantages Kennedy, who is both personally wealthy and is a better fundraiser than Markey. But we'll see if maybe once those ads are up, maybe voters will pay more attention to that critique.
Well, and I think it really depends what those ads look like. As you know, they can't coordinate between the PAC and the campaign. And if the ads are negative for any reason, maybe there'll be some more blowback. Steph, who is on TV right now? Has anyone launched a television ad just yet?
Joe Kennedy is up on TV with a $1.2 million ad buy. And I think this is the perfect illustration of why Ed Markey needs this money from outside groups. Back a few months ago, before the coronavirus pandemic became such a huge factor in this race, you could go knock on a door, you could have a big rally, you could go to events. But now this race is going to be done mostly online, mostly on television, and to reach voters in a media market like the Boston market, you're going to need a ton of cash. And so I think that's part of the reason why he can't sign a People's Pledge and say no to this money that he really needs.
All right, but I want to shift gears in a second to the 4th congressional race. But before I do that, and this is sort of an unfair question to you, Professor Jenkins, but I mean, this all really, it comes down to turnout, right? I mean, what is the turnout going to look like in the primary in September? As a political scientist, it must be really difficult for you to predict what that might be, because we're not even sure what the voting process is going to look like at this point.
I think that's another big reason, I'm glad you brought it up, Tim, about why this race is so difficult to predict, right? All of the public opinion polls rely on some sort of special secret sauce of predicting who's likely to vote. And we predict who's likely to vote based on who's voted in the past. But this election is so different. I'm not really confident that those likely voter models are going to be accurate this time around. The other thing I think that's really weird, and it makes this so hard to predict, is that some of the normal voting patterns that we would expect to see are sort of upended in this race, right? Typically, younger voters vote for the younger candidate and older voters vote for the older candidate, but that's sort of flipped here, right? Markey has a whole bunch of, because of his commitment to the environment, the young people are behind him and the old people are, sort of in love with the Kennedy name. And so it makes this race even more difficult to predict, because we're not really sure who's going to show up come election time, and how we're going to show up, of course, as you point out, is a whole other big question that's going to affect that as well.
All right, as I said, I want to talk briefly about the seat that is being vacated by Congressman Joe Kennedy. That's the 4th congressional district, and a lot of that district is in our market. And Ted, you've been covering that race very, very closely. Steph, so have you. And your lead today, again, on Thursday in Playbook, was one of the campaigns released an internal poll. What did it show?
It showed that the race is wide open, which isn't surprising at this point. 60% of voters said that they're undecided. So it's really anybody's game. But the person who's in the lead, no surprise, was the campaign who released the poll. Newton City Councilor Becky Grossman had 13% of support, and then everybody else in the race was under 10%.
So, I mean, what does that say, Ted, about this race, that the campaign that is in the lead, and I'll say lead because it's 13%, as Steph just pointed out, what is the undecided on that poll? You took a look at it. What number is that, and what does it say about where the race stands?
Yes, 60% of voters in this internal Becky Grossman campaign poll are undecided in the 4th district race. And as Steph and I have been talking about it in the last 24 hours, I mean, it's not really a shock to us, right? Steph and I have traded texts to remind ourselves exactly who is still in this race and who has gotten out, because there's so many candidates and yet they're getting so little attention. I mean, you take what we've talked about with the U.S. Senate primary, it's exponentially harder for these people. At least Kennedy and Markey are known quantities with famous names and everything else. You've got right now 9 Democrats made the ballot, as well as 2 Republicans for the primary. And, Becky Grossman, I don't know how many she's been on Newsmakers, but I don't know how many voters watching today are familiar yet with Becky Grossman. So those candidates are really going to face headwinds. And I think that one could come down to just a scrap on TV. And maybe, again, as Steph has astutely pointed out before, Becky Grossman is related by marriage to Steve Grossman, well-known figure in Massachusetts politics. This could be another one where a little bit of familiarity makes a lot of difference.
Yeah.
Well, can I jump in and point out there, as the social scientist, I would point out that the headline should read, "Undecided is in the lead." Right? All the other candidates statistically, right, are within the margin of error. And I know the Grossman campaign wants to spin it, they're winning. But if it's 13 to 10, That's statistically indistinguishable. So
we just got a C- grade, I think, on our reporting of the poll.
Well, Professor, we'll ask you the question is, Ted points out, you have this other race going on, and rumor has it there's also a presidential race for the general election. How do you stand out in a fourth congressional race, a congressional race right now? How do you bust through on that?
I'm not sure that it's possible to bust through. Normally where we would say ground game matters, right? But you can't have a ground game. So I don't know. I mean, I suspect in a 9-way Democratic primary, the person who wins this is going to end up having like maybe 20% of the vote, right? It's going to be a really sort of divided primary. And so the campaigns really have to figure out how do they identify who's voting for them and how do they make sure that those people get out to vote. And so I think it's what it's going to be driving. Getting your voters to vote is going to be critical here.
And once again, a reminder that our Massachusetts U.S. Senate primary debate between Senator Ed Markey and Congressman Joe Kennedy is airing live Monday, 7 o'clock from right here in the WPRI 12 studios. When we come back, Ted Nesi joins me in studio to break down a very busy week in news. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Joining me in studio is Channel 12's business and politics editor, Ted Nesi. Ted, it's been a pretty crazy week. I should point out that we're recording this conversation on a Friday morning, and tensions are very high going into tonight because there are some planned protests in the city, and law enforcement is planning for that. We cannot predict the future, but we know Monday night really got out of hand in the city. What has been the reaction of elected officials to what we saw in the city?
Well, Tim, all major elected officials in Rhode Island are Democrats, and generally speaking, that means they are pretty sympathetic to the peaceful protesters, to the arguments for civil rights, and for ensuring police treat Black Americans and Rhode Islanders the way they should be treated. But of course, nobody, including the peaceful protesters, supports violence and looting like we saw Monday into Tuesday. And so I think you're seeing them kind of almost, Tim, try to say three things at once. First, especially from Governor Raimondo, who obviously leads the discussion from an elected point of view, the governor has said, on the one perspective, she supports the peaceful protesters. There's no place for racism. It's a wake-up call. As we're taping here today, she's holding a press event with the head of Black Lives Matter in Rhode Island ahead of those protests expected later today. She's also condemning violent protests, but she and others, including Senator Reid in White House, have tried hard to distinguish. They're trying to draw a bright line between peaceful protesters who are upset about the accusations and in some cases documented cases of police misconduct we've seen versus looters, rioters, people who are just into mayhem. And then, of course, this is all during coronavirus. Right. And
no mass gatherings.
Exactly, Tim. And I think you're seeing more and more a real tension for governors who were very much in favor of lockdowns and shutdowns, like Governor Raimondo and others, especially in blue states, as well as public health experts who've been drilling into people, don't go out, no mass gatherings, no barbecues, you can't go to a funeral, you can't visit your loved one who's dying. But now people see folks gathering in huge groups, all close together, not everyone wearing masks. The governor keeps saying everyone's social distanced. You can look at those pictures. Not everyone was social distancing. And
she said that?
She didn't. She tried to argue they were.
Oh, okay.
And I just think that there's just a lot of pictures that appeared people were not 6 feet apart.
We're getting emails about that, right?
We are,
a lot of our viewers and readers are writing in going, how can some politicians support these type of protests, but then on the other hand tell us we all have to be just 5 people or less?
Yeah. And look, their argument is generally publicly, a lot of them say, look, this is just too important and too terrible what happened to Mr. Floyd to say you can't do that. But it does then raise the question, okay, so it's a balance. And so are there other things that the balance tips toward allowing for gatherings, allowing for groups? But, the other question is, there's a reason all those things were in place. And so we do wonder, are you going to see more cases at whether it's here or in other places from these large gatherings if anyone went who had COVID, especially if they're pre or asymptomatic?
All right, I want to majorly shift gears, and I always put you on the spot every week with this question, but it's a big one, and it's about the budget. I ask you every single week, where did this thing stand with the state budget? We're in June now. I haven't really heard any news, and by the state constitution, the state has to have a balanced budget. The fiscal year is July 1st, so we're just weeks away from that. Are we still hearing crickets, or are you hearing something blowing through the reeds?
Well, actually, since you and I talked last Friday, I heard from some folks after that broadcast, and my understanding is, previously Speaker Mattiello, and of course the budget starts in the House, and the House is crucial to the process, had said he really didn't want to wait till after the end of the fiscal year, as the governor had suggested, Jack Reed had hinted might be a good idea, and so he was thinking do it, even if it's really hard. But now they're looking at a $900 million deficit over the 2 years, the current year to balance the current budget, get it back to balance, and then next year's budget. And there is still talk in Congress about passing another bill that will have more relief for states. And so now I'm hearing that it's becoming more likely that the House and the Senate perhaps will pass some kind of holdover budget, or even just allow, as happened a few years ago, last year's budget to stay in effect for July, the first month of the new fiscal year, and then come back during the summer to pass a budget. Nothing's decided. There's a lot in flux. We still don't know what will happen in Washington, but all of that is on the table now, I think.
Well, and looking at the unemployment numbers in Rhode Island before coming into this studio, we're in the 240,000 range of people who are unemployed in Rhode Island. If the trend continues within the next 2 weeks, I can't believe I'm going to say this, 250,000 Rhode Islanders will be seeking unemployment benefits, okay? But Friday morning, new numbers came out nationally, and the numbers unemployment rate actually went down 13.3% from 14.7%.
Huge surprise this morning, yes.
That was not expected, right?
No, and it's a hopeful sign, I would say, because the fear was, we all knew that the coronavirus lockdowns were temporary. We were not going to keep every restaurant shut down for years or something. But the fear was, how much of that kind of policy can the economy sustain even on a temporary basis without doing permanent damage? And this is a sign that perhaps there will be a stronger bounce back out of the lockdowns, out of the shutdowns than we hope. Now, that was a national number. The other question is, will states like Rhode Island, that were the Northeast,
which always feels it harder.
Well, and also, Tim, the Northeast has been the epicenter of coronavirus, the highest number of deaths, generally the highest number of cases, and therefore often some of the strictest, shutdowns. So will it take longer in Rhode Island, in Massachusetts, in Connecticut, in New York and New Jersey than in other parts of the country that were not hit as hard originally, and then could it reopen faster? That we have to see.
Well, switching from unemployment to the biggest private employer in the state, Lifespan and Care New England, I'll say it, it just feels like that terrible soap opera that you can't help but watch.
Yes.
And it got lost maybe in the news here this week that you did a story that the two feuding hospital groups are going to restart merger talks again. I'm saying merger, I don't know if that's the right term. Is this a cooling off by both sides, or like sort of possibly a forced marriage?
I laughed when I first heard that they were going to announce this, only because I have covered so many rounds of Lifespan Care New England merger talks over the years. But it sounds like there was a thawing due to COVID. There's no in a foxhole, everybody has to talk to each other, and that's kind of where Lifespan and Care New England's leadership were, especially in March and April.
They really had to coordinate a lot of their care.
They were fearing a huge spike in cases. They said Jim Finale, the head of Care New England, told me the other day they shared PPE across their two systems, masks and gloves and things. They've never done that before, but they had to because it was a crisis. And I think that led to a realization on both sides. First of all, temperatures had cooled from the really rough falling out they had last year. And also, they say it's not driven by finances, but look, they're both in tough financial situations right now because of COVID and other things. And they think they would be stronger together, and there's a lot of pressure on them to get together between groups like the Rhode Island Foundation, Senator Whitehouse, Governor Raimondo. So, I think everyone is better off just waiting and seeing, because we've gone down this road so many times before. But the fact that it came kind of organically from them and after a time where they'd already been working together does make this an interesting one.
It struck me that before all this, we had to do separate shows. Care New England on Newsmakers, one show, and then Lifespan on another show. And then at the beginning of the pandemic, what happened? Both of them on the show
and they
at
came
the same
to
time.
us.
They came
People
to
should
us.
know. They wanted to be together to present a united front. That itself was striking.
All right, let's bring up the debate graphic now. A reminder that Ted and I will be moderating a debate between U.S. Senator Ed Markey and Congressman Joe Kennedy here live in our Channel 12 studios. Again, it was supposed to happen, Ted, at UMass Dartmouth, but everything has changed. 7 o'clock Monday night on Channel 12, WPRI.com, also airing on our sister stations out in Western Mass and in upstate New York, which covers extreme Western Mass. But Ted, we wanted to take, with 30 seconds left, a special focus on southeastern Massachusetts in this debate.
Yeah, you know, I grew up in Attleboro. You grew up on the Cape.
Yep.
I think it's often, if you grew up in Massachusetts, you can feel a little forgotten if you're not in Greater Boston, but you're also not as far away as a place like Springfield or Worcester. Not to say they don't sometimes feel bad. So we thought it was super important at PRI to bring these two candidates, this Markey race, to southeastern Massachusetts and ask them questions that come up from this community. So I think it's great that they accepted, and hopefully we have a good debate.
We have your back, southeastern Massachusetts. We'll see you Monday night at 7 o'clock and next week right here on Newsmakers.